County.
These prisoners have tested positive have been with others inside the cells. In Thika alone, I'm talking of Thika West alone, I had 70, out of which 22 tested positive. The rest, through the intelligence of my boss, the DIG, we are able to take them to the prison. But prison authorities are only taking those which are negative, and upon production of a certificate of testing to that effect. The test is going very gradually, slowly. Now I cannot arrest other people, Kenyans, and put them in cells. If I ask for bail, they say they don't have money. In a bit of Bangarane Mutu Uso kwa Uso, what are you going to do with him? And this is an offender. Talk a case of fraud, for example. Where are you going to place that place? And the court is saying that they're only taking robbery with violence, murder, and other capital offenses. I require interventions. Because this is not a police exercise. The Ministry of Health is the leading agency. I wanted the multi-agency to come on board.
All right, now ODM EL Member of Parliament, Oburu Oginga, has hinted that ODM leader Raila Odinga will be on the ballot in 2022. Oginga, who's Raila's elder brother, says that the ODM boss has invented a new strategy for 2022. This will be the 5th time Raila will be trying the presidency. And Raila in the past interviews has been saying that he is yet to declare his 2022 bid, as ODM has been pushing for BBI, a move that has been termed as Raila's strategy for 2022.
We are now making strategies for winning the election. We have won elections 3 times. But every time we win the election, we are robbed of that victory. That victory is known to the whole country, but we never go to State House. Why have we not gone to State House? But system is very important. And now we are with Uhuru Kenyatta, who is holding the system. So if the system plus our votes, which are always more than the others, what else?
And to a rather unfortunate story, with the rising number of teenage pregnancies in the country, a poor relationship between some parents and their teenage children has led to the rise of the cases. A training program has been launched in Uasin Gishu to empower parents in rural areas on how to address challenges affecting their teenage children, as Calvin Chitwa now reports.
More than 200 parents from Kabobo village converged here at Kabobo Bible College for a training. The training aimed at empowering them with relevant skills to help them address issues affecting their teenage children amidst a rise in teenage pregnancies in the country.
Janga la COVID-19 imewaletea wazazi changamoto nyingi sana kwa jinsi ya kuweza kuwatunza watoto wakiwa nyumbani. Manake wamekaa na watoto kwa muda ya karibu miezi 6 hivi na wamepata changamoto nyingi sana.
Reports indicate that at least 3,000 cases of teenage pregnancies were recorded in Uasin Gishu County alone between March and July, a period when schools have closed due to COVID-19.
Yanajiri. Hivi sasa tunapoongea katika kaunti yetu ya Uasin Gishu kuna watoto zaidi ya 3,000 inakiziwa kwamba wamepata mimba ya mapema. Na bila shaka haya yanapotokea ni mambo ambayo yanastajabisha katika kila jamii.
Trainers say many parents can't talk about sexuality matters with their teenagers, forcing a number of them to turn to social media platforms for knowledge and guidance, which can at times be misleading.
Kwa sababu watoto saa hii tukiwachilia, wengine wanaweza kunywa pombe, wengine anafuta hata bangi, ndio tukakaa chini kama wasasi ya Kabobo tukue kitu kimoja na tuweze kuchunga watoto wetu ili waweze kurudi shule mwaka uchao, Mungu akipenda.
They say the use of mobile phones should be controlled. The parents in the area have now agreed to be punishing teenagers of opposite sex who will be found in privacy and by the roadsides.
Tunaona kwamba wakati kiboko ilitolewa na serikali, hapo ndio tumeona watoto wameanza kukosa tabia nzuri. Tumetoa sheria yetu kwamba hatutaki kuona watoto wakitembea wawili wawili, hasa mvulana na kijana. So tumetoa sheria yetu kama Kabobo Village.
Peer pressure and misuse of mobile phones were other areas of concern raised by the parents. Calvin Chitwa, TV47, Uasin Gishu County.
Right, thank you, Calvin. Of course, as much as an unfortunate occurrence, such initiatives are welcomed and are of great importance towards, changing this that is happening. That aside, we cross over to the newspapers, and joining me this morning is Betty Adera, who's the KANU Women Congress in Nairobi, to take us through what, of course, she thinks, or what her weigh-in would be on the stories that we've captured also right there, and also what has been captured extensively on the newspaper. Later on, we expect Alan Lawrence to join us, but before he comes in, Betty, good morning.
Good morning, Linda. How are you today?
I'm good, and you?
I'm also good. Grateful to God.
All right, Karibu Sana. I'm not able to get you very well. But then again, let's try and see whether this is going to work all the same. And we'll be taking a look at the People Daily, what it is that has been captured right there. And also we take a look at what is on the Standard newspaper, the biggest story that has made a center stage throughout the weekend. And as for Friday, Serena Peace Team, the Mkapa we knew. And this has been captured on page 3 as Mudavadi, Wetangula, Karua and Ogeri recall tense moments with the fallen Tanzanian statesman during the 2008 mediation or mediated talks which led to the Grand Coalition government. We know very well that he was very instrumental alongside Kofi Annan towards assuring that as a people we are able to experience peace again after the post-election violence, that is 2007-2008. And Benjamin Mkapa, who passed on Friday, has been eulogized by very many people across Africa, across the world, as indeed a peace giver, a peacemaker for that particular matter. So on page 3 expounded right here, they just commemorate and remember this. I don't know what you make of course, this, and what would be your condolences message in regards to the death of Benjamin Mkapa.
Linda, I bless my voice today to join my fellow Kenyans and His Excellency in condoling with the President of Tanzania and the people here upon the great loss, their fallen hero. The late President Mkapa was a peace icon not only for Tanzania, not only for the East African region, but also the African continent. And this is indeed, a great loss, not only to Tanzanians, but to us. And I think I want to believe that the late President touched us as a people of Kenya, at a very personal level, at a time when we needed to be lightweight, following the much chaotic post-election violence and mess in Kenya in 2007, 2008, and when he agreed, to join the eminent persons, panel, to just come to Kenya and just converse to us and talk to us so that we with each other at a time when the country was literally, like on its knees, burning, people dying, people being misplaced. So for me, at a personal level, I will miss him. And I want to believe that we all then now have a chance to learn from him. Our leaders have a chance to learn from him and figure out ways to other countries who are in turmoil. And I want to just echo, that under the leadership of His Excellency President Uhuru, we have seen that Kenya as a country, has stood with its neighbors in South Sudan, in Somalia, and in some cases Ethiopia, when they were in trouble, and we needed to do the same thing that the late President Mkapa, did to us. So at this point, for me, just want to urge us all to figure out what it is we can learn, from his life. We can learn from his leadership, from presidency, and emulate those, of course, in remembrance of him, but also towards fostering, the current and future generations. And may his soul rest in eternal peace.
Well, okay, thank you so much. Of course, as the world continues to eulogize him, we also celebrate his life, and indeed we send our condolences again as TV47, the man who passed on, who was born in 1938 and passed on Friday upon that confirmation by President John Pombe Magufuli. We'll be giving you updates on, of course, what preparations are set in regards to his burial. That aside, let's cross over to a different story altogether, back to the front page of the People Daily. And what has been captured as the biggest story for the day is governors want Nairobi, Mombasa back on a lockdown. To lockdown or not, to reintroduce cessation of movement or not, is what, of course, Kenyans are grappling with. And we have, that decision day. Experts say that President is unlikely to reintroduce the cessation of movement in and out of the city. But they do agree that there is need to introduce drastic measures against the bars and restaurants as corona hotspots, or at this particular corona hotspots captured on page 7 of the People Daily, and also just captured right here on the front page, giving you a breakdown of the numbers of COVID-19, where we are so far, and what different counties have in terms of numbers. So far, almost 3/4 of the county, almost all the counties actually have recorded this. So just briefly, what do you expect of today's address? Briefly, and I think Alan is on board already. Alan, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, we had introduced you already. Alan is an inspirational speaker, author, and life coach. Alan Lawrence, thank you so much for your time. What do you expect of today's address, briefly?
I'll expect so much from the president in terms of what are the plans, because even if there is going to be a lockdown or not a lockdown, what are the plans for the common mwananchi out there? Because most of these things we are getting on paper, and most of these things we are getting to hear them from the news, as in, what are the plans? Like, let's say, assuming today they are going to have a cessation of movement in and out of the city, but what are the plans for the city dwellers in terms of if these people won't be going to work? What are the plans put in place so that they can contain these people?
All right. Betty, as many would argue that maybe the damage is already done, and, taking us to that point of cessation again, or reintroducing the tough measures or a lockdown is something that the president should not think about, is something that we should not think about. And what Alan brings on board is a picture of where, we need to move on after all. We need to have things moving. We need to have economic activities, thriving or ongoing as usual. So a clear indication that probably as much as there's that need, or the county bosses would, propose a lockdown depending on, what has been raised so far in terms of the surge of numbers. I mean, what would be your expectations so far of today's intergovernmental meeting?
I want to state categorically that the right to life, supersedes, all other rights. And the president, in his capacity as the head of state, is duly informed, by his health and economic, experts, of course, being advised by what the numbers and the evidence is saying. And I want to believe that if he goes back, to reintroducing the drastic measures, Kenya will not be the first. We have seen, Madagascar, we have even seen China, Wuhan, and these other, countries in the West, who opened up the economies, but then depending on how the virus was continuing to surge, they had to, reintroduce the lockdown. So that will not be strange. But for me, Linda and Alan, I want to believe that we need now to place a lot of emphasis on the county's capacities, to handle the virus and contain the containment measures, at county level. To what extent are our counties prepared to handle this virus? And I want to believe that probably that is what the president mainly, would want to check in with the governors in terms of, the preparedness state. Again, there's the other balance of how do we learn, to now live with this virus going forward, because it does not appear as if this is a virus that's going to go away from the modeling by the Minister of Health. it is yet, we haven't seen the worst of it yet. Like the worst is yet to come from what they are advising us. So to what extent are the counties prepared? For me, I think, that is key towards, flattening the curve, and of course, responding to the needs. But lastly, just to echo what my fellow panelist, Alan, is saying, I think the government also needs to figure out a way in which, even right now, they can provide some direct cash transfer, to our youths in the hotspots. I mean, if they could do it everywhere, brilliant. But if they can't, due to budget constraints, can our youth in the slums of this country, the most vulnerable young people, can they be getting even 1,000 bob? Can they be getting even 3K per month for the next 2 to 3 months, just to cushion them, socioeconomically, because actually things are really bad. And in that mix, I would also add, vulnerable women as well. If they take that drastic measure to also show support and meet, vulnerable people where they are falling apart, I think that would really, really, help. Even if it's just for 3 months, that would just have, get them back to a place where they bounce back and live with the virus.
Those are the proposals that are, ongoing. And people just trying to figure out what could be the best angle to take, what other radical measures for that matter would be reintroduced or introduced towards ensuring that we are able to deal. Like I said, the COVID-19 county updates are right here as captured by the people daily. Nairobi is standing at 10,298. That's pretty much unfortunate. Mombasa has 1,951. Kiambu has 1,114. Kajiado has 1,028 amongst the top 5. Of course, Busia also coming in at 698. And amongst the ones that have not registered anything just yet, West Pokot is at 0, Samburu is at 0, Baringo is at 0. Elgeyo Marakwet has 1, Tharaka Nithi has 2 cases, Kirinyaga has 3, Tana River has 3, Nyandarua has 5. Those are the bottom, 5, I would say. So we are waiting to see what will play out in regards. Meanwhile, we know very well that the top airlines are expected to resume Kenyan flights as of next week, as declared by President Uhuru Kenyatta, that of course this would happen in August. We can only wait to see whether he's going to maintain this stand today. It's roughly 21 days upon or after that address, that is on the 6th, and we all wait to see what will play out in his next address and also what it is that the governors will present in terms of county preparedness. We take a short break. We come back with much more on the papers, so don't you go anywhere. Congress in Nairobi. And as you can see right here on my screen, ODM denies a pre-election deal between Raila and Kalonzo. This is captured on the Standard newspaper. And this is one thing that we also want to discuss in regards to matters politics and how much, of course, it looks like it's a hula-baloo affair for the NASA coalition, as two Orange Party officials say that there's no deal that was struck with Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka. So let's pick this story that was compiled by Andreen as we cross over to the panelist of the day to get to hear their sentiments on the same. And Orange Democratic Movement says or has strongly dismissed claims by Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka of an alleged 2022 secret pact between him and ODM boss Raila Odinga. And as Andreen Kilemi reports, Wiper has responded to the statement saying it is in extremely bad taste as it appears to have been tailored to cast aspersions on the character of Kalonzo.
Just a day after Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka hinted of a secret pact with ODM leader Raila Odinga regarding the 2022 polls, ODM has rubbished the claims, saying no such deal exists. ODM states that it is not surprised that Kalonzo is making those claims, saying it is typical of him to want to reap where he did not sow. The Orange Party further revealed that at one point, Kalonzo tried to push Raila to commit to support him in 2022 as part of the NASA Pact, but the party flatly rejected the demand. Wiper has since responded to the statement, saying the tone and language in the statement by Sifuna is aimed at tainting Musyoka's character. In an interview with one of the media stations in Kenya, Kalonzo is alleged to have hinted of a secret 2022 political pact between him and Odinga, a deal he said is only between the two of them and totally excludes NASA co-principals Moses Wetangula and Musalia Mudavadi. Late last week, in an interview with TV47, Musyoka said he is expecting support from Odinga in his race towards the country's top seat.
Basi wala wazi hili, Mungu atujalie, tutakuwa katika kutafuta kiti cha urais kuongoza nchi, na sababu tuko nazo, nia nzuri tuko nayo, nadhani experience yenyewe tuko nayo, kwa sababu ukiwa vice president wa mzee kama Kibaki for 5 years, jameni tulifanya maajabu. Infrastructure hii, hata nilienda wakati mmoja nikamwambia mzee Kibaki, mimi na Ambassador Mudhaura, tunaona ile kazi umefanya unafika super highway, tukubalie tuite hiyo super highway Kibaki super highway. Akaniangalia akasema, na huko barabara inaenda hakuna jina.
Kalonzo is among NASA leaders who skipped Odinga's mock swearing-in ceremony held at Uhuru Park after he rejected the 2017 general elections results. Andrin Kilemi, TV47, Nairobi.
All right, Betty, as you can hear, well, politics is politics, and you know, different twists and turns. You are amongst the people, some of the parties that have joined the Jubilee Party. And it seems like it's not auguring well that Kalonzo Musyoka has decided to join the Jubilee Party also officially, or work with the Jubilee Party officially. And now, you know, all these talks of 2022 will always find, you know, their way. I mean, if Kalonzo decides to work with Jubilee Party, how then does he expect to be part and parcel of, you know, the race to presidency, you know, come 2022? I mean, just how genuine is Kalonzo in terms of, you know, seeing to it that development is felt by the people of Kenya if he still has his own interests set ahead? And 2022 is not very far anyway.
Indeed, 2022 is not far, and I want to believe that we are yet, you know, to be treated to a lot of, you know, drama, a lot of infighting, a lot of cross, you know, fighting between and within political parties. BBI is here with us. You know, the stalemate at the Senate, you know, in terms of revenue sharing, you know, is also here. And all this is happening within the backdrop of, you know, succession conversations across the country, because President Uhuru's formal term under the current constitution, you know, comes to a natural end in just under 2 years. So I think we are yet to see, you know, a lot of all this happening. But specifically to the particular issue you're asking, well, I don't speak for Wiper, neither do I speak for ODM. We are currently seeing that the oranges and the watermelons are not gelling as a salad. But I want to just add that they perhaps need to go back, you know, to the original agreement within the NASA coalition that was formed ahead of the 2017 general election, and just look at what really was the deal, you know, from a legalistic perspective. And if one, you know, coalition member wants to move out, you know, to join and then, you know, again, what are the legal implications and what are the processes which should be done, you know, transparently, clearly communicated, you know, across all the party, across the NASA fraternity. Yeah. But to want to join, you know, the Jubilee Party, to want to join His Excellency the President in assisting him in securing a lasting legacy for the short term, you know, that's left of this current term, I think is a noble idea. We in KANU did it, you know, out of wisdom and out of, you know, just feeling that we also want to help the president to provide the services that he promised to his electorate, and to make, you know, the ruling party stronger, and also deal with, you know, all the, what should I call it, all the disloyalty, you know, that we were seeing in years within the ruling party. So I want to believe that, for me, anyone who wants to join the president to help him steer this boat to the right direction for the short, time left, I think to me is a welcome move. How they do it is, purely, up to them. But again, everyone just needs to be aware that the world is watching, Kenyans are watching, party members, are watching how their party leaderships, are moving towards 2022 and what strategies, are being.
Well, it is obvious that NASA is probably not in existence. Yeah? It is almost obvious that NASA is not in existence based on what we see today. Well, just maybe in existence on paper, as they would rightfully put it. And, today I've gone through a story where the Yala Member of Parliament, that is Oburu, has declared that Right Honorable Raila Odinga is set for the big position come 2022. When Kalonzo comes out to say that, this was a secret pact and ODM was supposed to support him come 2022. I mean, what does it speak about our politicians? Of course, game of interest and, these coalitions that are always coming up. I mean, this agreement that is there between, Kalonzo and the Jubilee Party, KANU and Jubilee Party, just how genuine are they towards addressing the issues of the people? When you see such occurrences where in broad daylight, someone can come and deny what it is that you had agreed, or someone can come and craft based on what ODM claims that, this a sheer, craftings of Kalonzo Musyoka or Wiper Party, because clearly there was no agreement between them. Alan.
For me, I think, Linda, in politics, there is no permanent enmity and there is no permanent friendship. So here you come to understand that most of these politicians, at the end of the day, they have their self-interest in front of the people's interest. So we are tired of this country whereby we have so many politicians instead of leaders. So we need leaders to step in the position so that we can be able to have people who at this particular moment, we are thinking on ways that we can help the common mwananchi, other than having people most of the time they are thinking of succession politics in a sense whereby, like currently we are facing the pandemic, instead of them coming up and saying what strategies do we have in place in order to enhance the fight against the COVID-19. But most of the time we are busy politicking. Most of the time they are busy doing things that they curtail this country. So my take is I think politicians just need to step up and let us not think so much about our own interest,
and
but the interest of
picking from that, maybe we should just say that, well, it's important that we lock our ears or we close our ears towards that and go cross over to a different story altogether. Looks like it's not easy in Nairobi County. MC is in the fresh bid to host Elachi, as captured also still on the Standard newspaper, also the People Daily. I mean, coming to you, Beatty. What is wrong with Nairobi County? Why is it that there's so much drama in Nairobi County? One would have argued Sonko that did not do well, or Sonko is not, the best governor for Nairobi County. But it looks like left, right, and center, he's been able to pull almost everyone into this shenanigans. I mean, who would have expected that Badi would also be tight and, standing in front of the public domain to fire shots at Sonko himself, the silent known Badi. Who would ever expect that, it will not be easy also at the level of the speaker, Elachi, and amongst the MCAs. I mean, is it just Sonko, or there's a problem, or Nairobi has a problem?
Nairobi as a county now and as a city, previously has always been the heart of politicking in Kenya. Again, just by virtue of being the capital city, by virtue of being that it's the place where everyone else in the country watches and looks at. So I want to believe that this particular term, right from 2017 to date, and probably until 2022, we're yet to see, a lot of infighting, a lot of jostling, for space, a lot of perhaps, witch hunting and all that, because all these leaders were legally, put in place. Governor Sonko was elected, by the people of Nairobi. Speaker Elachi was again duly elected, as the speaker from within, the county assembly of Nairobi. Yeah. So the question really is, what is it? What is it that happened? Why is it that, at least for this particular term, we've never quite seen a week of no drama, or a week of no like issue that would portray, squabbling and wrangling, especially at the top leadership. Yeah. And remember, Linda, that the top leadership, is not at peace with each other. They are not gelling.
Right, yes, of course, evidently. I am not able... Mm-hmm. Some bit of a trouble on Martha's connection, but Alan, coming to you, are you proud of the Nairobi that you live in, the Nairobi that you stay in, the Nairobi that houses key, international bodies, a Nairobi that has been celebrated for years? Are you proud of it?
Currently, we are just in a mix whereby we don't see the proper direction because we are having tussles, and the common mwananchi, they are not understanding, because the moment they are having rankles, the people who are going to suffer, they are the common mwananchi. That's why in Swahili they say fahari wawili wakipigana ni nyasi umie. So in a sense whereby this confusion will waste a lot of time, in a sense whereby soon we will realize that it is 2022. Then we need to go and voting. But with this confusion, even the service delivery will go down. So you get these rankles, all of them, they are geared towards self-interest. We have the self-interest. For example, yesterday I was watching news and I realized it is so evident that the tussle between the Nairobi Metropolitan and the county, you get there in terms of tenders, because you realize that the NMS has come and stopped the projects that the county was doing, and the county is trying to stop the project that the NMS is doing. So you realize there are a lot of tenders, and whenever there is a money aspect there, you realize there will be some self-interest that they will hinder the service delivery to the common mwananchi. So we are taking Nairobi way back again.
Right, that's pretty much unfortunate. We know what has happened over the past 1 week. Again, Speaker Elachi swearing in a different member of a county clerk, and of course this raising lots of differences coming from the MCAs themselves, who are now coming on board to say that they're going to proceed and impeach Speaker Elachi. And of course, this is a move that is likely to escalate the wrangle surrounding the assembly, as they have accused Elachi of nepotism, impunity, disregard of the rule of law, and corruption within the Nairobi County. Betty, I don't know whether you were done weighing in to this, so we can cross to a different issue.
No, I just wanted to make a comment that I actually urge, the elected leaders within Nairobi County to put their differences aside, to come and act together, as a team for the sake of the common mwananchi within the city. Remember, Speaker Elachi has actually done a lot. There's a lot, to her name in terms of achievements as Speaker, amidst, the infighting, amidst being kicked out of office and all that. Governor Sonko, even him on his part, has actually done some tangible stuff, within the county of Nairobi. We cannot say that Sonko has done nothing. No, Sonko has actually done a lot. Now, but the head of the Metropolitan Services, Nairobi Metropolitan, in the short time that he has been there, we have also seen quite some stuff, that he has been able to move forward. So the point is, it is possible, with political goodwill, to move forward and just do the right thing and provide services to the people. So in the short term left, and in the name of the common mwananchi, the Wanjiku of Nairobi, I would just urge Adi, I would urge Governor Sonko, I would urge Speaker Elachi, and any other elected, especially elected leader, to just put their differences aside. There's not much time left to 2022, and just do the right thing and provide services.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And on that one, yes, we wait to see what will play out amid all these wrangles that are ongoing, and people going against what has been decided by the court, and others just focusing on ensuring that they affront their own interest in Nairobi County. So we follow up on that, and we'll be updating you accordingly. And in a story that I would have wanted us to capture, but because we'll be having it on the next segment extensively, I think we can only be allowed to just touch on it based on the cartoon edition of the People Daily this morning. And equitable, shareable revenue is what I am talking about. That is the revenue sharing across the different counties. And revenue sharing pot is right here. We're talking about 316.5 billion shillings, which again was very was on the hotspot of a controversy, or on the top of controversy. And, you know, as governors argued that maybe it was very little to be shared or to be given to the counties. But that aside, that was solved. And now again, we are at it. The 316.5 billion again being other controversial aspect, where, you know, the talk of the town is how then do we get to distribute this amount of money across different counties, you know, equally, if not equally, then fairly. And as you can see, the chef right there, you know, trying to distribute this. There's another county or other counties that are receiving so much, so, and other counties that are receiving almost nothing. Well, at least something, but, you know, in utter shock, or are they're like, you know, this could not be enough for us. So the shareable revenues that we're talking about today, putting the likes of Right Honorable Raila Odinga on the spot, President Uhuru Kenyatta on the spot, senators on the spot, the BBI now on the spot. What do you make of it briefly? Any of you can pick it up?
Linda, again, you know, when there's a stalemate, you know, at the Senate, the person who's suffering is Wanjiku across the country. And I would just want to urge, you know, the senators in their space to again put their personal issues and differences and thoughts towards 2022 aside, remove succession politics from this discussion, remove BBI itself from this discussion, and just focus on what's best, you know, for Kenyans insofar as the revenue allocation is concerned. And of course, trying to find a balance between how do you know, allocate it in such a way that the counties that have been marginalized historically also have the chance, you know, to catch up, you know, with the rest of Kenya. And of course, looking back into how the last 5 years, how have they also performed based on the revenues that they have been receiving. But also on the other hand, you know, being sure that they are ensuring that, you know, the money follows the services, and basing also the argument on the population, because again, it can't be a one-size-fits-all, because there are some counties that are more populated than others, and population is growing. We have a census report, you know, just from last year. So I just want to urge them to find that middle ground, to find that balance, you know, that ensures that there's no area in Kenya that's left behind, but there's also no area also, you know, in Kenya that gets too little to do anything tangible because of the population.
All right, and still also trying to flip and flop, just to get Alan's you know, way on this particular issue that we are discussing, as you know, the stalemate continues right here at the level of the counties. Alan, what would you say about this? I mean, Betty brings on board a very pertinent issue by saying that, you know, these leaders should put aside their differences, but just how genuine would that be? And anyway, overlooking the differences that could be there, overlooking the succession politics talk that could be there, I mean, just how possible is it to balance these finances?
I think it all boils down to this issue whereby why do we normally have census? Census is there so that so that the government can plan accordingly for the people. So it means that when the money is not in the picture, people will plan accordingly. But once money is there, people will start changing the goalposts. So here now it boils down that the government needs to follow the original plan, whereby money should be allocated fairly, or rather the government resources should be allocated fairly based on the census report that we have at hand. Instead of them going round, it is so clear. It is so clear. When we follow the plan, everything will be in place at the very right way. But if we keep on taking that, you know, we need to do this, all these kind of tussles will end up hurting the common mwananchi, and people won't benefit at the long run. We understand the politics of this country, whereby people will start things so that they can be able to benefit out of it. So we just need to change our mentality.
We delve deep into that later on our current affairs segment, just to see what are the prospects of us again getting a solution as of tomorrow, where of course the senators are supposed to convene again and discuss or debate on that. But there's an interesting piece right here, and I know it's not interesting because if at all you stay somewhere close to a church, or you went to church yesterday, then you'd agree to this report that says churches now get innovative ways to serve more followers, and many are holding up to 7 services a day, with some having rosters of those to attend. And so the church attendance in many parts of the country has improved in the second Sunday since the reopening of the places of worship 4 months after closure to curb the spread of COVID-19 pandemic. And a survey in different parts of the country shows that faithfuls are slowly adapting to the new normal as places of worship. Looks like Kenyans were eagerly waiting to go to church. Of course, they are focused on the social distancing aspect. And this time around, they said it's okay, it's fine. We'll do the 1 hour that is given to us as a directive. We'll ensure that we keep a social distance. We'll ensure that the oldest do not come to church, and we do not have Sunday schools. But the few of us who are able to come to church will come in intervals of about 6-7 a day. Betty.
Kenyans, we are people of faith, and we are people, who love our religious, beliefs.
Yeah.
And the minute the president, opened up the possibilities of having physical, physical religious meetings, I think that came in, with some fresh breath. However, the church space is also one of those spaces, just like bars and pubs, that it may be difficult to actually monitor and be sure that they are actually providing, they're following the restrictions. So again, it's up to our religious leaders to ensure that really happens. We are adapting to the new normal of, as you say, church services having, several services in a particular day, again, just to accommodate, the need to congregate within the restrictions, that have been provided. I also am aware that the churches are also still, continuing with the online services. So for those who still feel they can't go physically, they still have, that particular option. So again, it just behooves all of us as Kenyans, whether you're religious or not, whether you're going to church or not, but wherever you are, follow the stipulations and the restrictions that have been put in place, as we adapt to the new normal with COVID-19 amongst us.
All right, Alan, coming to you. As of yesterday, where I was, in fact, later in the afternoon, you could hear still, churches, there's music in different churches. But interestingly, also, there were some of them who were holding what one would call as, crusades. And I think outside, you step out and you find that there are people who've set up crusades. But the question is this what really the government, allowed them to do?
First of all, truth be told, this virus, we just need to learn on how we are going to live with it, because it is going to be there for some time based on what the models are there. So I think it is a high time that the churches need to embrace the digital space the most. And I have seen, like in our church, whereby we are having the online booking. You have to book your seat in order to be able to attend to church. So I think people who are doing this, I think they're just, Kenyans, we are very creative. Yeah. We always come up with avenues and ways through which we can be able to congregate and do the right thing. Although we can be having some things that they're not in line with the set standard. But I think the church, if we can do the right thing as we are being directed, as the way CS Kagwe says that I can get it, you can get it. So we'll be there to watch each other. We'll be there to ensure that this virus does not move. Because the virus does not move, we are the people who move the virus. So we need to have ways and modalities that we be able to contain the spread of this thing,
and
even as big.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we keep saying that, survival for the fittest, you need to adapt and ensure that you take care of yourself. Alan Lawrence, inspirational speaker and author, and also a life coach. Thank you so much for the great insights. Bedi Adera, the Kanu Women Congress chair that is in Nairobi. Thank you so much for the great insights right there. That's where we wind up on the newspaper review. Those are the stories that we had for now. And we cross over to a different segment after this short break.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Friend, welcome back to Morning Cafe. Time for the current affairs discussion. As we delve deep into the issues that we've touched on, we focus on the county revenue sharing stalemate that is in the country as it stands right now. And we also base our focus this morning on what to expect on today's intergovernmental summit headed by President Uhuru Kenyatta, as we get to, figure out what we'll expect next and what are the likelihoods of us finding other solutions that would help us deal with COVID-19 as it is in the country. And joining me this morning is Fred Asira and Kegoli Edwin, who will be joining us via Skype, who's a youth leader. And of course, they'll help me, put some sense into these particular issues that we're discussing. Fred, good morning.
Good morning, Lily.
You well?
I'm fine, thank you.
Kwani unasign check ama ni nini hiyo iko hapo?
Checks mi usign kawaida.
Karibu sana.
Thank you very
Good
much.
to have you.
Yes.
It looks like it's not an easy one for us, in the country.
Yes.
I think there's a time I heard you on set and we discussed the stalemate that is ongoing on, different parts of the counties. I said you are an economist. You are in a better position to give advice and tell us what it is that, we can do moving forward. And we thought it was a joke. We all thought that maybe in a week or two, we'll have a solution to this, but it looks like it's not nigh.
Yes, I think as usual,
yes,
we politicize everything. Even issues that pertain to the welfare and the well-being of our citizens.
Yeah.
So currently, I think that the politicization of the revenue allocation has taken the center stage as opposed to the welfare. And I want to agree and concur with the people who believe that it will be unfair for other Kenyans to lose money just because they are perceived not to be large in numbers.
All right.
And you see what...
So you're saying you're against the 1 shilling...
One person, 1 shilling ideology has been carefully crafted by individuals who want money for themselves as opposed to the people that they claim they are fighting for. Why do I say that? The essence and the basis of devolution as was captured in the Constitution was to ensure equity, not equality. So when we lose equity and focus on equality, we lose the spirit of the Constitution or the devolution as it was captured in our Constitution. Why do I say so? It will be very unfair if you deny counties that are perceived to be marginalized, that have been marginalized ever since, and again use that money to fund counties that are already established, you see. So I think we need to really critically look at that formula that most of these MPs are talking about.
All right, before we delve deep, and let's loop in Edwin Kegoli. And Edwin, Fred says that this issue has been politicized, and true to it, we have seen, of course, based on how the senators are addressing it, based on how it has involved the president and also the opposition chief. But just how best can we be able to deal with this in the event that it wasn't politicized, looking at the issues that are being presented in terms of numbers, in terms of the sizes of the counties and all that? Just how best can we be able to deal with this and overlook the aspect of politics? And how possible is it?
Well, good morning, and I'm delighted to join you this morning.
Good morning.
And first of all, there is an issue with regards to timelines. And when you look at Article 216 of the Kenyan Constitution, the functions of Commission for Revenue Allocation, it says that the Commission shall make recommendations to the Senate with regards to the revenue sharing formula. And after every 5 years, this country, it is constitutional that the Commission for Revenue Allocation, and through resolution adopted by the Senate, determine a new criteria within which revenue sharing formula will be done to counties and the national government. But you look at the ongoing situation right now, there is no timeline as to how Senate are supposed to handle this issue, and that's why they are still sitting on it. But if it was so definite, like it would be under Article 217 of the Kenyan Constitution, like, you know, within 10 days after Senate adopts a resolution, it passes on to the National Assembly either for approval, rejection, or to put amendments to that. So one of the challenges is we need a definite timeline within which Senate needs to hear and determine that. If they are unable to decide as to which way regarding the recommendation by the CRA, and then that is deemed to have been defeated, and automatically the bill is referred to the National Assembly. But again, it is also an issue of politics than objectivity, because if you look at it, what senators are arguing, they are saying they don't want counties to lose money, but they don't want to tell us why is it that the commission says some of them are going to receive less money. Somebody in let's say, for example, in Kiambu, Kiambu, they are very populated, as such Kakamega, as such Nakuru, Nandi. So equitable means I also get value for the monies I'm contributing to, through taxes and such means. So we need to be also very fair, because we value people more than land. So 1 man, 1 shilling, to me makes a lot of sense, because if the people in Kiambu are contributing quite a lot more, then they expect a lot more. So we need to be fair in arguing this case, so that Senate does not play politics with this thing. And we've heard about the issue of BBI again slipping through, saying to back this recommendation, then we are out of BBI. That also exposes a precarious, angle within which the BBI is framed.
All right, Fred, I'm sure you're itching to come in now that, there's one who's going contrary to what you would, recommend. And ethnicity playing, of course, on board. Let's first of all overlook the aspect of politics. And one would want to ask, is it that we are twisting this conversation, or we are pushing it to that conversation of, ethnicity, as opposed to considering the important issues, like you rightfully put it? And what he raises is pertinent. And you had talked about, counties that have been marginalized. I don't know how marginalized they've been for the longest of time, but reality is that equally the same counties have been receiving funds, and there was expectation of people of these counties experiencing development, but such has not been the case, to a point whereby these other counties have felt like, what, we have carried you on our backs for the longest of time. It is time that you wake up and smell the coffee, because we've been giving you this, yet you've not done anything. You've not constructed roads for your people. Turkana is the same Turkana that was there years and years back, yet money was being allocated for the same.
It will be unfair to judge counties that have been marginalized for over 50 years by benchmarking them within 5 years. Because if you've traveled, and I'm sure you are, you will see that there are a lot of changes in most of these counties that we're talking about.
Right.
It's not as they were 5 years ago.
But why is it then that the argument on board is that we need to catch up with the rest of the people? If there's been progress, why don't they note this progress and saying that?
You see, Linda, let me give you an example. If you take Kiambu, for example, that has been touted as the most populated, the population is not predominantly from Kiambu itself.
Right.
Kiambu is adjacent to Nairobi. So most people who are the rural urban migration, who move from wherever, from your Kakamega village, from my Siaya or wherever it is, come to this place. So are we going to fund Kiambu based on the number of people who have migrated
to Kiambu?
To Kiambu, while those people do not get that funds back in their counties.
All right, they have migrated to Kiambu. They stay in Kiambu, probably. That's
but
why
they are not originally from Kiambu.
Oh, yes.
So they need development back from where they come.
Counties, okay.
So you understand. So when we say that we want to give Kiambu the largest share by virtue of the number of people that they have, we are not being fair to the people who have come there.
Right.
Because they also expect development from their places where they come from. Now, if we want to if you want to base your revenue allocation on 1 man, 1 shilling, it also means that you are going to ethnicize. Because then you are going to go back to what I'm telling you, to starting to find out where do these people come from. And that in itself is bad politics. So I think whereas we want to ensure that everybody gets a shilling, it also poses a danger. So there are so many facets of this issue that we need to look at if we want to be safe. Yes, the idea that everybody should get a shilling is very noble, but how to is what we are not being told by this year.
All right.
And we need to understand the how to, so that every Kenyan, even the people in Turkana, they deserve a shilling each. You see, but also the geographical area needs to be developed, because when we talk about constructions, when we talk about infrastructure, it's based on geographical locations. You cannot, I don't need a road as an individual. Are you going to build roads into my houses?
No.
You're not going to build roads and dams into people's houses. You have to factor in geographical locations. So we have to play with the man. We have to play with the geographical locations. We have to look at how developed are you. You see, for a Turkana child to access a health facility, for a Turkana child to access schools, it's going to take a struggle as opposed to a Kiambu child. So why do we need more schools in Kiambu as opposed to Turkana?
All right, well, that's an interesting argument right there. And you know, which is actually what is bringing the bone of contention as it stands right now, looping the likes of Raila Odinga, who've argued, well, maybe in the same line that you have argued, or maybe his supporters within the Senate have argued, you know, based on that line. So bringing us to the talk of BBI and, you know, Irungu Kangata's utterances the other day. First of all, one would argue, how best can we just argue this issue and have this conversation and loop out politics 101% as it stands? Edwin.
Well, first of all, I need to point out quite quickly on what my colleague has said. There is no ethnicization with regards to one man, one shilling. Because if I'm contributing my money, it is not on the basis of ethnicity. One man, one shilling means everybody gets the value of their contribution. If you're contributing less, why do you want more? If I'm contributing more, if I ask for more service delivery, which is constitutionally guaranteed, you see, what we need to bring ourselves up to speed with is the provisions of Article 203 of the Kenyan Constitution, which should be the guiding factors. The rest are opinions. You know, it sets out a very clear and elaborate criteria upon which county governments need to receive money. And there are a number of instances where the CRA would determine and recommend to Senate. 1, poverty factor. 2, land area, fiscal effort, you know, the issue to do with fiscal capacity and efficiency of counties, development needs of counties. So what we need to bring ourselves up to speed is, why did the Constitution enshrine these criteria? It is because the people who developed the Constitution knew a time would come when we would look at these factors. Coming to BBI, number 1, this BBI needs to be so indelible that it can stand political waves. But something that is crafted on quicksand would not stand the test of time. And you heard what Senate Majority Leader said on one of the television stations in this country yesterday, that we will back the BBI only to the extent that ODM or whatever MPs back this formula. That means, and he said that Central Kenya counties are in the BBI only to the extent that they support this revenue sharing formula. Why is it that way? Because number 1, they feel Central Kenya contributes quite a larger chunk of money and they need a better share. Number 2, they say in everything, we also need an entry point. So if our entry point is blocked, then why should we craft another way into it? But again, another question that comes to mind is this. If BBI proposes 35% or thereabout of, national revenue to counties.
That is on the BBI.
Yes. Why is it that we are fighting over these monies? it is normal that nobody wants to lose money.
But interestingly, Edwin, and as we loop in Fred, it looks like the people who are against, are people who literally are not losing much on this one. It's the Rift Valley for this particular reason. The people from Nyanza are not losing so much on the proposed formula. Then why is it that there's this tone of rejecting what it is that is being proposed?
First of all, I want to make a rejoinder to my good friend.
Yeah.
Edwin is making very valid points, but he's overlooking very fundamental issues. You see, with utmost good respect, the differences that I usually have with the learned friends is that they want textbook solutions. The Constitution says it is written. You see, I'll give you a basic example. Would you say that
what is in the Constitution today are old trends of sharing revenue that are probably have plunged into this disaster? And what would be the new proposals?
Exactly. Yeah. I just want to give you a basic example. For Mama Mbogas, I represent very basic people to understand. You see, if you look at someone like CK, Kirubi, or Wanjege, the likes, I don't know how much they contribute in tax. But when we meet on the road, they never stop me and ask me to move my car so that they can pass. You see, if we want to base revenue allocation on how much you contribute, then it's going to be very unfair to people who have nothing to contribute.
Okay.
Yet they are Kenyans and they expect development.
Right.
You see, when it comes to revenue allocation, I, who contributes more, must carry the other person who doesn't contribute because we live in the same country.
Right.
You understand? So we cannot, whereas 1 man, 1 shilling makes sense. How about those Kenyans who do not make a shilling?
Right.
Should we ignore them?
No.
So we have to look for a formula that encompasses the people who makes no shilling, and we must be alive to the fact that there are Kenyans who do not make a shilling.
I will want to play the devil's advocate and assume that Edwin in this case meant that the taxpayer has for the longest of time not received anything that is worth what it is that they contribute, and in this aspect maybe he wasn't overlooking the
no I understand that. That's why I'm bringing it clearly,
right,
and that's why I started by saying that he's making very valid points, but there are things that we are overlooking, you see. And when you look at what the BBI is proposing, the BBI is proposing a 35%.
35%, yes.
So that every Kenyan, whether you contribute or not, you get a substantial amount of money to develop you as an individual, the 1 man, 1 shilling, and your area as a whole. You understand?
Yes.
So we have to, why I'm saying that it will either make, if we go to 1 man, only 1 man, 1 shilling formula thing, it will either be, we are ethnicizing this because the people who brought that formula know it has been the tyranny of numbers all along.
Right.
And we know the people who claim they have the numbers.
In this case then,
in this case,
is BBI in a way equivalent to the proposed formula?
To a larger extent.
Yeah.
To a larger extent.
Right.
And when the BBI proposes that we need 35% of the budget to be allocated to
the counties, yes.
The BBI does not go further to tell us how.
Yeah.
But it tells us how much.
All right.
So what people are jostling for is the much.
Yeah.
Because we understand even the people who we perceive are developed, they also want money.
Yes.
Nobody wants to lose. So if we develop a formula where the people whom we wanted to develop, the ones who were marginalized before, are going to lose the little that they are getting, then why do we devolution? Let's go back to centralizing everything so that the national government,
the national government to determine. And going back to my question, why is it then that Mount Kenya is so much so determined to push for the 1 man shilling formula? That is 1 man and of course 1 shilling formula, if they are not the primary beneficiaries. And I think I asked this, there's some of the people who are beneficiaries in this case but are still against it, some of them who are primary beneficiaries being against it, and some of them who are not primary beneficiaries being for it. I mean, what exactly is it that we're not being told here, Kigoli?
Well, in everything you must have a better deal for yourself. And, politicians in this country, they will angle at something that brings better returns to the people, and that's expected. That is politics. But again, I want to, just if you allow me, I want to bring my colleague to quick realization of Article 204 of the Kenyan Constitution under Equalization Fund. We should not ignore that provision, because that is where those northeastern or marginalized counties again come in. Because under this Equalization Fund, counties like in Kiambu, in Nyanza, or in Western don't benefit too much. But those in the northern areas which are marginalized and such. So we must also look at this, because what this Equalization Fund does, it handles electricity, schools, roads, health facilities and such. So we must also remember that, because it is not to every county, but to those that are marginalized. Again, I want to say this, members from Central Kenya who are advancing this formula, it is because the formula favors maybe one or two of their counties, which is still fine. But again, we must be very objective in the statements and points we make, because my issue is the non-definition of time when CRA recommends to Senate. Because if Senate knew that after 10 days, if we don't resolve on this issue, then it is automatically going to go to the National Assembly. They would have made every effort to resolve it. But because they know they are not bound by time, only to the extent that they have made a resolution, and that's when it now becomes a time-bound thing. So what we need to do is, let us look at the efficiency of running counties. Also, these counties which are asking for more money, they can't tell us how they've been utilizing the monies that they have been advanced to them. Some of them have allocated zero on development. They have been heaping money on recurrent expenditure. They have not been focusing on development. You look at the issues to do with youth empowerment, women empowerment. Many counties are not doing enough, and they want more money. You see, if you want more money, you must tell us your plan. We must know your plan. So what we need to do is ensure efficiency and prudency in the management of public resources. Let them be guided sufficiently by the PFM Act. Let them be guided by the Devolution Act. Let them be guided by all the statutory provisions, under public finance in our constitution, so that whatever decisions we make with regards to public taxpayers' money are informed by need and a fair, equitable criteria. One man, 1 shilling ensures that whatever you, because if I'm contributing 100 shillings, why do you want to give me 10 shillings? Why do you want to give, somebody more than I deserve? So let us also be very fair and equitable.
Okay, well, the question then would be, just how possible is it for these 17 counties that would be on the losing end willingly say that it's okay, we accept the allocation of fall? It's pretty much unfortunate, in as much as maybe they've got nothing to show of what they have been awarded before. Before we come to wind up on this particular one, let's take a short break and we come back with much more. It looks like we've opened a Pandora's box on this one. And coming back to you, Fred, moving forward tomorrow, what do we expect of the Senate meeting that will be there amid all this blackmail, amid all this political talk that is ongoing, amid all these threats, and leaving us wondering whether indeed BBI is anything that is of interest to the common mwananchi, or indeed it's a personalized affair. And one would argue, if you say that you want to step out of the BBI, I mean, the argument on ground is that President Uhuru Kenyatta has so much interest on the BBI as much as the likes of ODM. So why is it that his allies would argue that maybe we're going to pull out from the BBI, subject to conversation some other time? But all the same, what do you expect of this as you respond to what Emmanuel has brought on board?
Okay, first of all, I want to just make a small rejoinder to my friend. And I like how he's bringing out this issue.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at the equalization fund, the amounts that goes to the marginalized counties you're talking about, plus the normal revenue allocation that they get, and you sum it up, then you prorate that vis-a-vis what other people are getting. They are still losing money.
All right.
So when we say they are losing money, we have considered the equalization fund. So we do not want a situation where anybody is losing money.
Okay.
We do not want Kiambu to lose money. We do not want Turkana to lose money. If we can come up with a formula that ensures that Kiambu gains and Turkana gains, that is the formula I'm going to support.
But just how then do we get accountability for this at the end of the day, like what he said?
What
do they
saying,
project what it is that they're going to...
Let me tell you, Linda, and I want to make this using very simple example.
Right.
If you give a rich man $1 million and ask them to buy a piece of land, and give a poor person 10,000 and ask them to buy a piece of land, how do you expect equality in that?
No, almost impossible.
So he who gets more must account. We cannot say that Kiambu is developed so they cannot account.
They need not to account, okay.
Exactly. And if you look at the situation on the ground, it is the Kiambu governor who was impeached by virtue of corruption, not in Turkana. So why are we being lenient on them and saying that the people who are in Turkana cannot account for the monies we've given them?
Okay.
Everybody must account, whether you are given 10 million or 10,000 Kenya shillings. So we cannot use corruption as a blanket of gaslighting the people who have been marginalized before, that they have not done anything with them. So we need to have a formula that is going to ensure, and I repeat, that each and every county gains, so that nobody feels as if they do not belong to this country, just by the virtue that they are not contributing as much as the
others are. Yes. Okay, well, that's an interesting view right there. And I think because we are all expecting to see what will play out tomorrow, we can only cross fingers that, this stalemate is addressed, because what's important is that we need to see devolution working.
Exactly.
And as it stands, the governors are now complaining that, activities are at a standstill. So, Kigoli, I don't know whether I'd allow you to weigh in on this, but just briefly, in 30 seconds if possible, as we wind up on this subject and cross over to a different altogether. 30 seconds.
Well, first of all, number one, how much are these marginalized counties raising? Number two, how effective are their systems of revenue, raising from their jurisdiction? Because we must also look at this factor, because it is also a criteria that is used by CRA to allocate money, so that we look at how efficient is your revenue sharing system. So what we need to do is to make sure that counties are also very effective in raising revenue, so that they do not almost depend on the allocations by the national government, which of course is constitutional, but again, you must learn to be independent as well to some extent. So
I don't even want us to go through to that, because we are literally laughing here in studio, because we're thinking, oh my God, just how possible is this? Yeah? Sorry to cut you short, but we're like, oh, how soon is this going to happen?
But yes, I would say this. What I want is the Senate to look at this issue very objectively. Let us put aside all political angling. Let us look at it from the perspective of service delivery and honesty in terms of public service. Because the Constitution trusted Senate to adopt resolutions that has been forwarded to them by the CRA. So perhaps what we need, maybe if we get to the point of BBI, is we also look at Article 217, so that we also insert a time clause that if Senate does not, or if a situation like this happens, what happens? Is it, going to automatically go to the National Assembly as it is, or what next? Because we do not want to be in a situation again like this next year, because this formula is due right now. It is due, because if we do not implement it right now, then number one, we are violating the Constitution. Yeah. We cannot postpone the pain of today for tomorrow, because tomorrow will come. Okay. And when tomorrow comes, we'll again say we are not ready. So let this formula be implemented right now. Let us deal with the consequences. Politicians, let them be responsible, because they've been trusted by the Constitution to ensure implementation of this formula by the Constitution. We are due 5 years. We need another formula. And this formula is informed by the prevailing circumstances, the current situation, going into the future. We cannot postpone this situation. Let us deal with it right now.
Getting it wrong is not a problem, in as much as we know very well that well, this is something that is enshrined in the Constitution. So we proceed with something that we know might be wrong, just because we want to fulfill what is enshrined in the Constitution, or to go by what the Constitution dictates. Wind up on that one as we go.
You see, our parliament is in itself lackluster. Yeah. They don't take anything urgently. They don't take anything seriously. So even if this revenue sharing formula was to come from Senate and go to National Assembly, again, nothing much will happen. You see, the parliament as is currently constituted does not live to the 1/3.
Two-third.
I mean, to the two-third
gender rule. So if it's about following the Constitution, we
do not have a parliament that follows the Constitution. So we cannot go into that and get anything out of it.
All right. Well, Kenyans have voiced reactions ahead of today's, of course, extraordinary summit between President Uhuru Kenyatta and the Council of Governors. Here are some of those we spoke to, and this is what they had to say as we come up and, talk about that.
Haina faida na sisi. Kwanza walishafungulia watu walishaenda. Kama tungekuwa na lockdown wangeendelea vile walikuwa wanaendelea kabla hawajafungulia watu. Hawa jamaa ruhusu ndege zikuje hapa. Hiyo ugonjwa Mwenyezi Mungu ndiye anajua lini itaisha. Kila Mkenya achukue precautions and we live our normal lives. Tutavaa mask tukitafuta kitu kutafuta. Lakini you cannot just make us as slaves. Kila saa sisi tunahangaika and then pesa. Every time minister amesimama, every time huyo mtu mwingine amesimama, ile every time wanatangaza wanaingiza pesa kwa mfuko every other single time, na ule mkaja wa kawaida unataka pata pesa kutumia.
Tufungulie tuendelee tu na kazi, kwa sababu hata tukisema ni kufunga, already wenye walikuwa naenda wameshasafiri. Kwa hivyo kusema ati saa hii ni kufunga tuko rate ya mimi ningeomba tu ache wananchi waendelee na kazi.
The best way to curb this is actually to try and think about lockdown. It may not be total lockdown, but partially. And also recall curfew. And believe in me or not, that's what the president is going to do. Because see, the counties have realized they have no capacities to curb this menace. And so they really expect the president to help them by actually locking down movements. Because even if we try as much as we have, we've seen roadblocks. Kenyans are peculiar. They are very unique characters. See, with roadblocks, they still find their ways.
Well, they say we're treading on dangerous grounds. Because then they are likely that we are going to experience a second wave, which is pretty much unfortunate based on, the specialists and what they say. And it's important that you are part of this discussion. What do you make of this? What are your expectations today? Remember, it's important that you call us. The numbers are down on your screen. Tell us what you think about today's, address by President Uhuru Kenyatta, if at all he's going to address us after this meeting by the county governments. And coming to you, Fred. as it is, they say that the damage is already done. So tuendelee tu.
Hatuwezi endelea tu. We can't because it started on.
Let's miss this phone call. Allow me to pick
no
this
problem,
one.
no problem.
James Njagi, good morning. James Njagi? Good morning. Yes, good morning, James. How are you? Hello?
Morning.
Morning to you, Jambo.
Sasa mimi niko Embu.
Ndio?
Nataka kuparticipate. I'm fine.
Karibu sana.
Okay, nimeshukuru.
Ndio.
Hello?
Ndio, tunakusikia maoni yako.
Jambo kabisa.
Asante.
Sasa mimi mimi nataka.
Looks like it's not very clear. But yes, we hope that he's going to call back again. Yes.
Yes, what I was saying is that we cannot continue with business as usual. The disease is actually taking a lot of lives. We are losing loved ones. People started by saying that most people are like, I don't know anyone who has been affected, I've not any, but now it's coming closer home. If you go to social media, for example, somebody was saying it has become an obituary. Everybody is losing someone.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it's only COVID that is killing people, but it's contributing a lot to this factor. So we need to be extra careful. When it comes to hustling and bring home the bacon, the government also needs to make systems and ways to ensure that even the hand-to-mouth parts of the population are considered. Because when you just tell people to also work at home, which right now very few people are, it becomes very difficult for some of for a certain demographic of our population. So we just need to be aware that the disease is not a government thing. It's even killing government officials. Yes, so Kenyans must really exercise caution, must really adhere to the Ministry of Health guidelines and regulations to ensure that we do not put everybody or anybody at risk.
County governments have been key contributors to this particular fight. And now the governors are out here after holding a summit last week or holding that session last week. And now they want President Uhuru Kenyatta to proceed again and lock Nairobi, Mombasa, and Mandera and the likes of these hotspot counties. Some of them arguing that if this persists, then they're going to lock themselves, within their specific counties. One then would want to ask today, to lock down or not, Emmanuel?
Edwin.
Edwin, sorry.
Let me say this.
Yeah.
You see, the war is on already, and we cannot afford to retreat. I do not see too much sense in locking this country down, because look at the damage the 3 months of lockdown caused the economy of this country. It is a very intricate balance for our president, Uhuru Kenyatta, to balance between livelihoods and lives. Because you look at how many people have lost their jobs. You look at how many people, will lose their jobs again if we go back to lockdown. But what we need to do is this: as citizens, we need to exercise responsibility. The president placed on us.
Allow me to cut you short a bit. Allow me to cut you short. Let's pick this phone call from Kimari, and then we come back to you. Good morning, Kimari. Good morning. Yes, good morning. Kimari, hello. Yes, Jambo. Jambo. Looks like we're not able to. Again, I don't know. Maybe there needs to be looked into that. But anyway, coming back to you, Edwin.
Yes. So what I was saying is this. Number one, we need to tighten up our belts. We need to,
so that we fight this disease with all we've got. Yes, we're losing people. Yes, infections are soaring. Yes, the economy has been hurt badly. Yes, there is a responsibility on us to keep fighting. What we need to do is to exercise responsibility as citizens. Let us observe what the Ministry of Health has advised us to do, because this virus, it doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon, and we cannot lock this country down forever or for as long as the virus is here. You look at global experts, what they are saying. WHO advises that this virus is here for a longer time. So what
are you
we
not
need to
scared
do
of what we've seen across the world, in Europe, a resurgence of the same?
Yes, I'm mindful of that, and yes, that is happening. But again, what do we do? You know, it's a very delicate balance. One would say, if I want this country not to be locked down, you know, against a backdrop of what? If we are locking this country down, at what expense? You know, such questions, even if you ask experts, they are divided in opinion. There are those who say, let us lock it down again to prevent, you know, more infections. Others are saying, let us continue this way, because if we lock this country down, how many lives are going to be at risk? Because I do not think some people will just stay in the house, eat nothing, have their families, their children crying, they want food, they can't provide, they don't have jobs, they've lost income, no streams, whatever. You know, it's a very delicate balance. But that's why we have President Uhuru Kenyatta at the very top of this country. So I believe he has advisors that will advise him well. But as for me, I do not think you know, a second lockdown will really work. What we need to do is, let us put on our masks. Let everybody have their masks on. Let us ensure social distance. Let us go out, you know, do what we must do only when there is need to be. And also,
but just how possible is that? Let me loop in Fred and ask this question. Someone was having this conversation with someone, and he was like, you know, while we are telling people to keep a social distance, while we're telling people to ensure that they have their masks on, while we're telling people to, you know, ensure that they abide by what has been presented as measures, have these people gone to some of the slums in Nairobi, you know, one evening at 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. when people are going back to the houses and everything? You know, you just stand somewhere at the balcony and observe the numerous crowds of people that are there. Just how possible is it to keep a social distance?
You see, that's one of the counter effects of even locking down the country, because we are not considering the slum factor. Yeah. You see, when you lock Kibra or Mathare or Dandora, for example, you are confining a larger crowd in a very small area, which beats the social distancing mantra.
Logic, yeah.
So when you release them to go out there, they're actually exercising their social distance when they're hustling out there.
Okay.
Because if you go to Kibra, you'll find that the average household has not less than 5 people. And the distance between one household to another one is barely a meter. So what social distance will those people be exercising when you lock them down? So, and that is why I was saying, when we're discussing the revenue allocation thing, is that most of the policies that we put are a rich man's policy in this country, where people who contribute a shilling feel like they deserve more than the rest of the people. So nobody has taken their time to understand what happens down there. So even if we lock this country right now, the country should have been locked immediately when we reported the first case. We should have locked down the entire country, done all the measures, and ensured that we contain the disease. When this disease was first reported to be in China, we should have stopped the flights from coming to this country. But what did the government do? So right now what we are doing is just punishing the poor man, as opposed to containing this thing. So the government needs to come up with a measure that is going to ensure that the people in slums are taken care of, the people who hustle, as it's usually said, do their hustle as usual, and everybody else gets their daily bread, and they are safe. So we cannot just fight this disease by locking. We are not the US. We are not Italy. We are not the US.
Who are capable of taking care of the citizens, you know.
No, you see, like if you go to a place like Germany, there are no slums in the Scandinavian countries.
Right.
So when they lock down, they know what they are doing.
Literally
locking down cannot help us in this country.
But we have seen this across other African countries, you know. And South Africa the other day registering even more cases. At some point they locked down and then they decided, no, we cannot do this because then it is hurting our economy. Let's go back to some bit of business. Then boom, it wasn't good and they had to go back to where they are. Is it because they do not acknowledge some of these issues that we are raising right now?
I think governments use the word economy loosely sometimes when they want to achieve a narrative. We cannot base human lives on economy.
Yeah.
Per se. Economies are fixable. Lost human lives cannot be fixed.
Okay.
So if we are going to say that we are not going to lock down because the economy is hurting, then we are losing the whole idea of fighting this disease.
Right.
The disease should be fought by any means to ensure that people's lives remain. And that is why countries that are developed were locking down their countries and feeding their people, and or ensuring that the people get the daily bread. Now that we cannot give people daily bread, people will either die of COVID-19 or die of hunger. So which one will kill people first in this country?
As it stands, it looks like.
So we are fighting this disease benchmarking by countries that we are not equals. So our experts need to look into our demographics, into the country and how it stands to ensure that the solution that we are giving, the options that we are putting on the table really do fit with our country and how it stands.
So some governors in their own wisdom, Edwin, argue that there could be some practicability in ensuring that we have county-centric partial lockdowns. What do you say about that?
Well, the first question is, do governors have constitutional powers to lock down their counties? That's a question that you need to answer while giving their submissions as to, inter-county law. But again, the question is, I'm happy at least I agree on one point with my colleague that we needed to deploy our heaviest artillery with regards to when the very first case was announced. That was when, perhaps all stringent measures needed to be made. But right now, I do not think the president can just come out and ambush us again with the lockdown. At least he needs to prepare us. People need to buy food. People need to, just say, if it is lockdown, let it just be a serious lockdown, Let him deploy the heaviest artillery. And another question is this. Is it time we invoked the KDF Act, Is it time? So we need also to ask ourselves very critical questions so that when that time comes, when the question will be put to us, but what did you do when the moment called for you to act? So what we need to do is this. Let us hope that the president will advise us, in the very best way, because I trust my president. I trust my president. So moving forward as a country, and I hope to disagree again with my colleague, that this country's economy, we are the largest economy in East Africa, East and Central Africa, one can say. So if you lock down the giant economy in this region, and then you are, in other words, hurting other economies that depend on us, because we are very, very, actually this country is among the top 4 in terms of innovation and technology. And you look at what our young people have done in terms of bringing up innovations in response to this COVID-19. They've done tremendously. They've done a great job, and they need an applause for that. So let us protect also those with pre-existing conditions, because they are the most at risk. But again, economy and lives cannot be separated. I need the economy to move for me to survive. If I don't have an income, which is economy, then my life is at stake. I'll die of hunger. I don't want to die of hunger. I don't want people to lose jobs, because when they lose jobs, where do they go? they'll be, messed up with the system, they'll be messed up with the circumstances, and some of them could resort to criminal activities. And of course, the law will be there. The law will not know that you lost your job and you're frustrated. Law, ignorance is no defense. Yeah. So let us make decisions that will, move the economy forward. Because right now, you want to compare this situation with the 2008 financial crisis, the global financial crisis, which does not measure up to this crisis. This one is more serious, more dire, more severe, because you look at how much our GDP is going to shrink. You look at the global, meltdown. Yeah. Look at the global GDP. It's really, really hard. And experts and economists say it will take a longer time for the world GDP to come back to its practicability and efficiency. And lastly, on that, on county governments, you see, some county governors are not serious with their jobs. They are not doing enough. Only 300 beds. Some counties cannot make 300 beds. Yet a Kenyan, can make some 7 beds on a daily basis. One, if you empower that person, and then there is possibility that we could have reached this 300 minimum bed threshold.
But the question was, are they up to standards? I think I had a doctor here and said the other day, and the question was, well, making it is just one thing. The question would be, are they up to standard? Are they what is expected, medically and all that? So in as much as we would want to argue it that way, then we also look at, how viable, how important, how key, these beds are towards, transforming whatever it is that we want them to do,
But the governments, we have the Kenya Bureau of Standards that, determines the quality and standardization of products in this country. Yeah. Like a young man who is making beds, the government said they are going to be subjected to KEBS, standardization. So I'm not worried about that. Our government has effective and functional systems, so they'll be able to, to determine the operational ability and efficiency. Again, an important question or point to note is this. You see, in this country, we have the brilliant people anybody can think of. We have brilliant young people, brilliant experts. Government has the best brains one can imagine. So I believe that whatever the president is going to discuss with governors is going to be objective and is going to be in the best interest of this country. And what governors need to do is to focus on service delivery. Some of them are too wired in politics that they cannot concentrate on what matters to the ground. Some of them even are not sure of what they need to do. Almost 3 years, 4 years into their term, you go to their counties and you want to see what they've done, and you ask yourself, who did we elect to take care of this? So let us be serious and very prudent in service delivery, very efficient, so that the people of Kenya reap the benefit that they truly deserve. So let us lead the charge of economic recovery. We need collective effort, and we must also, thank the media for the work they've been doing. You guys have put your lives on risks a lot to make sure there is there is information are informed. So we really give you our thanks.
All right, thank you so much for that. And speaking of which then, he talks of the brilliant minds, he talks of the people who are there to advise the government and all that. And I think we've all been working based on the advices that we get from the brilliant minds. And today, there's been a lot of complaints on matters communication and how this is disseminated to the people. Some argue that, the Ministry of Health is not giving us clear pictures of what exactly is on ground. And that is what will determine how successful we'll be on this particular fight. So when we're looking at the damage that this causes in terms of, terrible communication or communication that is not clearly set towards us addressing this, what do you say about that? And how helpful would that be if at all we streamline to ensure that we are able to successfully deal with this?
I may not understand what the people were saying that they are not being communicated to by the Ministry of Health actually mean.
There's been lots of double speak. There's been lots of confusion in terms of the information that is coming out, apart from the usual daily numbers.
Yeah, because I think whereas I might not have, let me not say that, the Ministry of Health in itself has been trying You see, like you're saying about the daily briefs and all those kind of communications that are churned out from that house, they have been coming quite timely and efficiently. So we do not have a problem with communication. The problem might be the information that we are being fed on.
Okay.
They communicate a lot, but you can just be talking, and saying nothing in particular. So I don't know what information Kenyans are looking for.
Right.
Because as I am concerned, I get to listen to the Ministry of Health. I get the guidelines coming from them, and I try to exercise what they communicate to us. Okay. Yes. Having said that, today's meeting, I believe it's going to be about the disease. I hope. Of course, the revenue allocation will be key.
Right.
Also. And I'm bringing this because there's a point I wanted to say and I lost it. And I want to put it clearly now. One, Senator Kang'ata Irongo is a very sober individual. One of the few politicians that you can sit down and listen to and they make a lot of sense. He's a very, very reserved individual. So when he speaks, you must listen.
And backed by Murathe.
I don't know who backed him.
He did. Murathe backed him. I'm just adding a so okay. When Murathe speaks again.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is when you see him speak, I want to caution people who will go for his neck because he has a position. So he does not just wake up in the morning and make such kind of statements.
Okay.
It must have come from somebody. So it is the somebody we need to identify and go for their neck if anybody wants to go for their neck. But Senator Kang'ata Irongo must be listened to. And I want to say that before he even comes again to make such kind of statements, he must also take a step back and read the mood of the country. Because currently, what the BBI is doing is holding the country that was actually broken into pieces. If we remove that glue reckless, yes, I'm telling you the truth, because it is the handshake on 9th March that made a difference. If we remove that handshake, I'm telling you, we'll go back to 8th March, to where we were before that handshake. So we do not need to make reckless statements, especially when it revolves around the handshake and the BBI, because this country is healing. The wound is still there. So we must disassociate anything else that is not in BBI from BBI. Nobody is doing anybody a favor in this country, and that must come out. Nobody's doing anybody a favor. We must learn to coexist. And if you do not want to coexist with other Kenyans, you can take a step back and enjoy the chaos.
Do we need to add anything more? I think it's
I'll leave it there.
You leave it at that. Yes. Edwin, you want to say anything as we wind up? Briefly?
Yes. Number one, if this revenue sharing formula is proving problematic to the Senate, then under Article 217, they are obligated to seek opinion and advice from governors, from professional bodies, and invite the public to make submissions on the same. So perhaps they can exercise that constitutional provision to unlock the deadlock. Number two, while the president is meeting the governors today, I hope that whatever governors are bringing on board is something that is practical and doable, something that will help to move this country forward, that will help to contain the virus, what we need to do is to blunt the momentum. Number three, we need to, perhaps it is time to develop, unemployment claim system so that while government wants to reach out to people, we don't make assumptions that all people living in Kibra are poor, all people living in Mathare are poor. There are people who live there willingly.
but they are earning quite a significant amount of money. So we also need to think about graduates. We have thousands and thousands of graduates who don't have jobs, who don't have any sort of income. Those are vulnerable people, and we need to find a way on how we can sustain them, because you know, these Al-Shabaab militants can prey on our graduates because, you know, they are brilliant, they are smart, they are thinking, they are sharp, they are tech savvy, so they can be used by these militia groups to advance a negative agenda. So we need to take care of our graduates. Number 4, we need to also keep empowering our technical and vocational institutions so that we produce these skills that will go into, the market, ready to do things and move the economy of this country forward. So lastly, as I wind up, I say that as Kenyans, we need to pull together, we need to lift each other up, and let us know that out of this corona pandemic, that a brighter day will come, and that the grace of God will help us fight this virus, and our responsibility is going to be key in determining the future and the present of this country. Thank you so much.
Well, Kigoli, Edwin, and Fred Asiri have been the analysts of the day. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for the great insights. I know we can talk about this, as much as, what, of course, the entire time, but time is not on our side, I would want to say until the cows come back home. But yes, here we are. We come to the end of this current affairs segment. Thank you so much for your feedback. The few of us who tried calling in, not to worry, tomorrow we'll ensure that we have the lines clear so we can have you also contribute to this conversation. That's where we get to wind up the current affairs segment. We're crossing over to a different segment altogether. And equally, we have the breakfast of the week. So stay tuned, because indeed it's going to be an interesting segment later on as we talk matters food security after this short break. We're all about food safety and, availability and the aspect of quality and, just ensuring that we get to understand the importance of this, because every other time we're told, kukula ni kukula. It's not about that. It's important that you sit down and also understand whatever it is that you're eating, is it of quality? Is it safe for you? So we have a specialist who is going to join us this morning, Mrs. Rosalinda Kisero. She's a food safety and consultant and industrial microbiologist. Yes, mouthful of activities that she does. But then again, she is here this morning to take us through that session of understanding the importance of food quality and safety that falls under food security at large, which is quite a huge angle to look at. And now we focus on these key issues, that is food quality and safety, just to see to it that we're able to understand the basics, especially at this time when we're dealing with COVID-19. Remember the Ministry of Health at some point saying that it is important that we all ensure that whatever it is that we eat is of quality that will protect us from the current situation and also diseases, other lifestyle diseases, and is safe. Safe is based on how you, of course, get these foods right from, if they're products, you get them right from the farm and all the way to the table at that point where you get to eat them in terms of cleaning, in terms of handling them. So Rosalinda is joining me this morning. Rosalinda, good morning.
Good morning, Linda. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for your time.
Karibu.
And of course, while it might sound like it's just easy, take your fruit, wash it, eat it, I know you agree with me that it is not. And that's the reason why we've termed it necessary to have this conversation this morning. We just want to get the key basics of, first of all, why it's important to ensure that we have good quality of food and safe food for that matter.
Thank you so much, Linda. I always say that let food be thy medicine. Mm-hmm. Let's not eat to go and find medicine. Yeah. Let food be thy medicine, in that what you eat should be able to prevent illnesses and sicknesses from coming into your body. Mm-hmm. So that is why it's not as easy as just harvest, wash, and eat. It's you should understand, what am I eating, what am I harvesting? Mm-hmm. How am I going to consume it, and what is it supposed to do to my body? What am I trying to achieve when I'm eating? Right. Not just eating to full. We have grown up in a society where we eat to full. You eat just to make your stomach full. But as much as you fill your stomach, what are you trying to get from your full stomach? Where do you want this food to go to? Do you want this food to go to your bones? Do you want it to go boost your memory? Do you want it to go to your heart? Do you want it to build your circulatory system? What are you looking at? Mm-hmm. And when I am introducing this food to other functions of the body, am I introducing damage to these functions of the body, or am I bringing health to these organs? Mm-hmm. So it is very, very important how we decide and choose what to eat. Yeah. No longer to just eat to full. No longer mothers giving babies food to grow fat, right? But you give them food to make them.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes this is beyond us in terms of, us caring about what it is that we eat in terms of quality and all that. Hence, the reason why I'll pick some key bits that we can discuss, because there's so much that is, of course, in this particular topic. And the first one I'll start with is, when it is beyond us, food quality control systems in Kenya, just how strong are they to us ensuring that it's okay if I'm able to go out to the shop and buy something, say processed foods and all that, I am well guaranteed that the quality is good, the safety is good.
Yeah. In Kenya, I have seen the efforts that have been made where we have multi-agencies. We have different bodies which are dealing with food safety. Like we have KEPHIS, Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate body, which checks the assurance of the inputs and the food that comes out of the inputs and the produce. Then we have other directorates like Horticultural Directorate, we have Coffee Directorate. Those ones are meant to do licensing. Then we have our own KEBS, which role is to ensure that part of their function is to ensure that the food that we consume is safe. Mm-hmm. We still have other bodies like Kenya Dairy Board, which is designated to check on the quality of milk. So I can say the Kenyan government has in the past and even currently tried to bring in so many bodies together to collaborate and ensure that what we eat is safe. Mm-hmm. My concern would be that most of us, we have seen these bodies as just inspectors, not knowing that there are bodies which have been put in place for us to cooperate with them to ensure that what we are consuming is safe. They are not just like our watchmen, but the responsibility of what we consume is both on the mwananchi and the regulator.
All right, and speaking of which, there are numerous foods that we'll be looking at when we're also looking at the coming in of the control systems in the country. But I'll narrow down on one. Let's talk about the milk, which I would want to assume will represent the rest. And would want to understand the aspect of milk and the quality control that surrounds it. In most cases, we've had issues with, the people who actually milk out there and, in large numbers for sale for that matter, and, how they get it to the consumers, because in most cases, they do not take a look or they do not focus much on the control systems and how important it is for them to do that.
Linda, sorry, I lost you a bit. There was a bit of poor connection. If you can just come up with the question again.
I'm saying there's so much that we can delve in terms of ensuring the controls of foods or different foods. Let's narrow down on the milk aspect. We've seen how sometimes, from the farmer, this milk goes direct to the people, to the consumer, without considering the key control systems that have been placed on board. So in such occurrences and in such special foods like milk and, in terms of handling them, how do we get to ensure that they are safe and of quality for that matter?
Yeah. First of all, I would say that milk comes from the animal. So as I always encourage people is that it's a farmer responsibility to ensure that they work together with the regulators to ensure that quality is in the milk. Because we have been living a life where we want to test quality in a product. But my approach is let us build quality in our product. If the animal feeds on proper food that will allow us to get, that is not contaminated, then we'll have milk that is not contaminated. But imagine, Linda, a situation where you feed your animal with aflatoxin contaminated feeds or heavy metal contaminated feed. Then you expect the farmer at the point of expressing milk to remove heavy metal or aflatoxin from milk. It becomes a disjointed kind of a control that we are trying to put in place. So for us to have quality milk, we should also bring in the aspect of the farmer who feeds the animal. What are you feeding the animal on? Is it free from the contaminants of concern like heavy metal, like the pesticide residue? Imagine if the dairy meal has been sprayed with the banned pesticides or pesticides which are above the permitted levels, and then we detect it in milk, Linda. What are we going to do about it?
It's hard. So how do we check? How would one get to check whether this is safe? Milk at any point is safe. For instance, most of the cases nowadays, we go to the ATMs, the milk bars and all that. So how do we get to that point where, at the level of home, we can check and know that this is safe for consumption and this is not?
As a consumer, it's difficult because you will need a laboratory to test this.
Right.
So my advice would be, let us work with a processor. Let us buy milk. I'm not bringing in a politic here or anything, but it's always safe to buy milk that has been processed from a processing facility which is regulated by Dairy Board and can be held accountable in case there are contaminants that are found in milk. The reason I'm saying this, things like antibiotic residue in milk. We all know that a farmer should observe the withdrawal period when you are treating your animal. Then if I buy this milk as I go and buy it from my neighbor, and I don't have the capacity to test for residues of antibiotic, I'll just consume it with antibiotic, and we all know the side effects of taking milk which is contaminated with antibiotics. But for a processor, the Kenya Dairy Board has put in regulations such that a processor is supposed to monitor to check and test for residues of antibiotic. A processor is supposed to check and test for aflatoxin in milk before they use it. So I would advise that the easiest way for me, before I buy milk from an ATM, I should kind of try to understand who supplies that ATM with milk. And I think that is also regulated by Kenya Dairy Board. Most of ATMs are regulated such that they are supposed to receive milk from a processor, a licensed processor, not just a licensed processor, not just a processor, but a licensed processor.
Okay, this brings me to my next point, which will be about cooking foods and consuming raw foods. And you just talked about milk, and in most cases you're told it's okay, make sure that you boil it. When you boil it, you'll kill the germs. When you boil it, you'll kill, what would not be good in that particular milk. Is it really true, or is it just a myth?
Yeah, it is true in terms of microbiological contamination.
Yeah.
It is true. because cooking temperature destroys microbial cells. So if you want to remove the microorganisms of concern, the illness-causing microorganisms, boiling would work. But then, even when you boil, there are those that are heat resistant, you know, because temperature and time works together. So you have seen, you and I know, the way we boil milk and you stand there waiting to blow before it, and you remove and you switch off the burner very fast. So there will be no aspect of holding time there. You'll just boil, you see it bubbling, and you switch it off. But remember, in this milk is a very rich food for microorganisms. There are those that are heat resistant, that can survive even longer temperatures of cooking. So this kind can only be eradicated or eliminated by a processor. There's a processor who does different kind of treatment. There are those who do pasteurization, and they have their pasteurization temperatures and holding time. But in the house, you don't have your holding time because you're observing that isimwagike. So you will not have the holding time that is required.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so in this case, one would want to know the temperatures introduced, the durations of cooking and all that. How do they come in handy to ensure that there's that balance of matters, you know, safety and quality at the same time?
Yeah, temperature and time is very important in that you, first of all, you know, there's time you take to achieve the temperature. During this time, there are those microorganisms that will still be surviving. For example, when you're still heating, when you heat at 30 degrees, there's an organism that survives even at 37. There's an organism that can survive even at a temperature of 55 degrees.
All right.
So by the time you're heating material or whatever source of heat you're applying gets into the item that you're heating, and it achieves that temperature, there are those that will still be surviving. So that is where now the element of time that you allow this organism to come into contact with the heat. It's like when you're given antibiotics. Usually you're given antibiotics, not a one of those, right? You're given for 7 days, you're given for 14 days. It's because the death of living cells, and these are germs, the microorganisms, is by log reduction. If I expose at 70 degrees, within 1 minute, I'll reduce the log by maybe 100. In the next another minute, I'll reduce by 1,000. In the next minute, I'll reduce by 10. So it requires exposure time to the treating material, to the killing material, to destroy these living cells or this living organism. Even disinfection. When you apply a disinfectant on a surface, you're supposed to leave it for a while. Time is a key element in achieving destruction of living cells, of viable cells.
All right, well, of course, on that very note, Rosalinda, allow us to take a short break, and then we come back to expound some more on that.
Okay, thank you. and even other chemical and other contaminants exist in the soil. So I don't know how we need to change how we handle them. In other countries or in other places where there are good controls, you see that once they have been harvested, they are washed, and they are, even when you're selling, they are displayed on racks, they are displayed on crates, they are displayed on decent, clean environment. Because the more we expose them to that, the more we get cumulative contaminants. And some of these contaminants may not just go by washing, because once it's there, it's there. It's absorbed on the skin of the fruit. Let's say like tomato. If tomato already had, it was planted in a soil that had heavy metal, and then after that you also went and threw it somewhere in a soil on a ground that is still contaminated. There's water flowing through that market. There's battery water that is being drained. Every waste is coming into contact with that soil, and tomorrow you just come and you spread your mat there and just begin to sell. Even if I wash, I'll not be able to remove some of these contaminants because they don't come as loose particles. And secondly, if I'm trying to wash, maybe I can say broccoli, and I want to wash and consume it raw, I'm sure not all of us will clean it in hot water and give it a holding time, dip it in hot water and leave it in hot water to kill the germs.
Right.
Nobody will do that. We'll just wash it with tap water, which is not adequate to remove the organisms that we are talking about, like Salmonella, E. coli, and Staphylococcus. And these are food safety hazards. So it will also go back to our own consumer responsibility. How do I want my food to be made? We set the standards. If you go to a market and you find someone just selling your fruits, your apples next to a drainage or in a dirty place, you just refuse to buy. Or even if you don't refuse to buy, I'm not saying we don't go to the market and support the mama mbogas, or we educate each other. Let us transfer information, the knowledge that we have shared through this broadcast today. Let us share, and maybe you talk to your neighbor about it, talk to the farmer about it. Let us go back to sensitization and awareness to the farm level. We are living in a society where a farmer is seen as just that person. Farmers are not just those people. All these food safety hazards can be well controlled if we bring the farmers to realize the importance in ensuring that the food that is consumed at the table is safe. And for sure, it is the truth. We all depend on farmers. If a farmer doesn't use the banned pesticides, all of us are doomed. If the farmer does not dry their maize properly, all of us will consume flour that is contaminated with aflatoxin. If they don't dry their peanuts well, we'll consume peanut butter that is contaminated with aflatoxin. So I think the best way to go about it is let us bring sensitization down to the farmer. Let us identify and recognize the value of a farmer in safety and health in this country. Then that way we'll be able to control. Because if we tell people not to buy, we are the farmers. Some of us have been brought up and raised by farmers, you know. So we also need to have our produce in the market and think and ask ourselves, why is it that many times when we want to export, have you ever seen the quality of produce going out? It is so clean. They even have a pack house that has specification of that is supposed to meet. HCD will go and inspect the pack house. Who inspects the pack house of food that is going to Kangemi market?
All right. Nobody.
Others will want to wash them, we want to sterilize them, but I think we need to go back to the element of building quality in what we eat. And building quality will only start from the farm before it gets to the food.
And of course, speaking of which, also we come back to the cooking aspect. And we know very well the different forms of cooking hugely affect or, are connected to how, of course, we can ensure we consume quality food and also, safe food for that matter. So numerous foods, the likes of meat, sometimes one would want it tender, well cooked, a little bit raw and all that. The likes of sushis that are prepared with raw ingredients. So when we're coming to the aspect of cooking, what would be the ultimate advice in terms of how we handle our foods and the forms of, the forms of cooking that we have on board towards ensuring that we are guaranteed of safety?
Cooking is meant to ensure that there's safety at the table when you're consuming it. But there's those semi-raw, partially cooked food. Like you want to make steak and you think it should not be overcooked, or there are those ingredients that you want to preserve. So, and in most cases you realize that such partially cooked foods are not recommended for for pregnant women or people with compromised immunity. That tells you that we know that there are those surviving microorganisms that could be poisonous to people with compromised immunity.
Yeah.
It also sends a message to you that it requires a strong immunity for you to eat partially cooked food. So you see, that is very tricky. I wouldn't tell you to eat food that is partially cooked if you don't have strong immunity, because the surviving microbes like Clostridia, which is a food poisoning microorganism that can even lead to miscarriage, it causes death, could have survived the temperature. As I explained earlier, that the temperature contact time is meant to destroy the heat-resistant microorganisms. And the likes of Clostridia, which causes botulism, can survive in that meat and would cause food safety, could cause food poisoning. In vegetables, like, I don't know, in our country we don't do dried vegetable powders, but I know that people are moving to that direction where you get dried vegetable powders, you put them in your smoothies, you put them in your salads. I would advise that before you consume such vegetable powders and smoothies and all that, you check the source of this powder. Was it processed by an organization that is implementing a system of good hygiene practice, or was it just processed by somebody who just wants to sell? So,
and speaking of which, also we would want to learn, how best to ensure that, again, the chemicals that are used to preserve foods, because preservation is key. Also, these ones could be preserved by drying methods, but there are others that are being preserved using chemicals and all that. Also, in that case, how safe are the foods?
Chemical preservation is safe if you follow the guidelines of Codex, which is an international guidance. They have given permitted chemical levels for chemical preservatives, for each category of food. So for every category of food, there's a permitted level of additives that you're supposed to put. So in most cases, it only goes wrong if you're not following that guideline. Like if maybe you're using sorbates and you're using sorbate you're supposed to choose the food item according to the category of Codex. So maybe you're using sorbate in a food that is not supposed to be used in sorbate. So it also should be used based on the guidelines that are given by Codex. Don't just put additive, don't just put a chemical preservative without looking at the permitted levels in milligram per kg. How much am I supposed to put if I'm putting this sorbate in milk? How much am I supposed to add if I'm using sodium hydroxide maybe in my cereals? Depending on the category that you're given by the Codex International Guidelines. Don't just add. If you're putting on confectionaries, they tell you these are the chemical preservatives on confectionaries. If you're putting on your sweets, these are the chemical preservatives you should put, and this is the level you should use. So in many cases, people just hear that somebody used sodium benzoate and you want to do it in a different matrix of a product and you apply, and maybe it's going to be toxic if you use it in that matrix. So my advice would be, let us follow the Codex guidelines when you're using the permitted chemical additives.
That I will assume will determine the expiry date. That I assume will determine the expiry date. So again, expiry dates on foodstuffs. Sometimes you're told, it's just 3 days too. Sometimes you're told it's a day after, so maybe it's still not poisonous. I mean, it gets a little bit confusing.
Expiry dates are determined based on the risk factors. And risk here in most cases is microbiological or even chemical, maybe deterioration of the quality, like vegetables, if it's exposed to light, it will yellow and you lose the nutrients. And if it is meat or if it's fresh foods, the microorganisms will have grown because the contamination, like the preservation we have done, is not likely to take longer. Like, for example, pasteurized milk. Milk that is pasteurized, you're given a number of days that you should use it and even storage temperature, So you realize sometimes you buy pasteurized milk and you did not store it the right way, then it goes bad. It tells that there was the treatment that pasteurization offers had allowed some number of microorganisms which can cause the milk to go bad to be surviving. So it depends on the nature of the product and the kind of treatment that it was given and what was left inside there.
All right. Okay. Well, coming back to a question right there, as again, I invite you to interact with us. That is a viewer back at home, because it's important that you also ask some of these questions. And one person asks this question. Is it important or is it wise to have food or grocery delivered, or is it safe during this time of the pandemic?
Wow. If groceries delivered, that you are going to cook them or you're going to eat them raw?
Now that's another question. He just asked that. Is it food? Is it good to have food and grocery delivered? Yes.
Yeah. If you're going to eat them raw, I would advise that you also wash them, clean them before you eat them. Because you don't know what it has interacted with, you don't know how it was prepared. Maybe the source of supply is not known to you. You've never visited the kitchen and known how it is prepared. So something could have gone wrong. So just for your confidence that you are not consuming something that is toxic, I would advise that you take your other treatment measures like washing. And if it is cooked food, eat it hot.
Yeah.
Just eat it hot.
All
and
right.
let it be from a credible food outlet. Don't just buy from anywhere. Buy from a credible food outlet. Credible here is a food outlet that you have history with and you know.
All right, let's talk a bit about cross-contamination of foods. I remember during my primary days when we used to be told, don't put onions and fish in the refrigerator at the same time. So sometimes you put foods together and probably they get to contaminate the other. So in this scenario, how do you ensure that you get the right foods, sitting on the same shelf and, foods that would contaminate the others on a different shelf and, just getting it right?
This is interesting, and I like that you have brought it up. I usually see people buying meat, you buy fish, you buy everything, and you put them in the fridge. But you should have a way that you separate the food and based on their category. Imagine you store your fruits just below fish that you have not even put in a can. What happens? Fish at some point will some fluid will be coming out of the fish, which is raw. You don't know how it was prepared, and then it will drop all the microbials into your fruit or into your vegetables. So if you are to store food, which I have never understood why you should buy so much meat and keep it in your fridge. If you are to do, please have a compartment way of storing your food. If you want to store, have a compartment, have containers, and cold foods like the ones that require refrigeration, store them in the freezer. The ones that require freezer. The ones that do not require freezer, store them in that vegetable container that is at the base of the food. Everything that you store should not be to a close proximity with them, something that is oozing out liquid or anything. And also let us be in the habit of cleaning and disinfecting our fridge. Fridge is not a sterilizer. It's another home contamination, a very big home contamination.
Well, you talked about disinfecting our foods and all that. Sometimes someone was telling us, it's good to even literally take soap, disinfect it, wash it literally before you cut it. Is it a wise thing to do, or is it just go and use, plain water to clean it? Plain water in plenty.
Imagine you bought beetroots, Linda, from Marikiti. You want to wash it with, it's full of mud, full of everything. And you want to grate your beetroot and eat it as whole because the skin is what you're looking to get your nutrition from, right? So in that case, I would just advise that you wash your beetroot very well. If you want to do it with soap, then you rinse it very well. That will be my advice based on the risk that because I'm not going to cook it. I'm going just to wash it and then grate it and make it into juice or put it in my salad. So if I don't do that, the fear is if I wash it badly, I will have carried all the salmonella, I'll have carried all the E. coli, I'll have carried all the contaminants and brought it into my salad or into my juice. If you're making that preparation for a child or somebody with compromised immunity, you will have introduced a lot of problems. So when you know you have sourced your fruits or vegetables from a place that has compromised hygiene, just do thorough. And there are also some, if you can afford, there are salad washes. You can wash with running water and then you give it time in salad wash before you consume.
All right.
So many people use time for that.
Okay, I know we've touched a lot about preservation methods and all that, but I'll come back to it. And sometimes, you're at home, you probably do not have a refrigerator, you do not know this technique of drying, the leaves and keeping them somewhere safe and all that. What is in preservation that is very important about food safety and quality?
In preservation, you're trying to retain the food as it were, looking at the nutritional and also the safety of the food. So you should not preserve to destroy one side of what you're looking at achieving. You might retain the nutrients and expose your food to hazard. Or you might preserve the food from hazard and destroy your nutrients. For example, if you take fresh leaves of spinach and you keep them in fridge, you lose all the water-soluble nutrients from it, vitamins from it. If you take your your meat and store it in fridge and it had contamination with something like Clostridia. By the time you're eating it, you'll get your food poisoning.
Yeah.
So preservation also depends on what you're trying to get out of it and how you handle it, especially if you're doing refrigeration.
Right.
If you're doing dry, of course, you'll also lose some of the nutrients, because the more you dry, the more they dissolve and they go with the method that you're using. So it depends on why you're preserving it. And if it's for shelf life purposes, maybe for ready to eat, I think as a processor, especially when you're talking about to processors here, they should do tests to determine the impact of the shelf life and the preservation that. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, thawing and microwaving. That's another thing. Sometimes you're told it's very dangerous. Don't even microwave food that is going to be eaten by babies. Microwave are dangerous and all that. All the talks that we hear about. So in this case, in connection to food and safety, food safety and quality.
I always advise that just let every process follow its due.
Yeah.
If you know you want to cook food, just let it thaw the right way, because that means in the middle of it there are some compounds that you have frozen that you're now boiling to thaw. You have seen that. During thawing, you can also contaminate this food. You have seen it in most cases. People throw it in dirty water that had some previous vegetables washed in it, or just put it in the surface and you keep cutting with a small axe. Just if you want to thaw your food, that will also bring risk of contamination, even physical contamination. Imagine if that knife breaks inside the piece of meat that you're trying to thaw, or if you touch it and spread other germs on it, or you lose a lot of fiber. It's a fiber-rich product. So my advice would be just let it thaw slowly. Don't try to speed in the thawing process.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what you want to.
You spoke about aflatoxin, and yes, we've heard of it a lot in the past days, especially women hear about that right here in the country, and we get scared based on the kinds of foods and meats that we actually consume. Storage is another factor. Let's not overlook preservation. I know with storage would work in together, but in the line of storage,
aflatoxin, if I can measure on aflatoxin, it comes on how it's mostly contributed by how you store your produce after harvesting, and also there's part of good agricultural practices that will also contribute to reducing the number of molds on farm, like you have to make the furrows and follow good agricultural practices. So once you follow good agricultural practices to ensure that on farm there's no so much mold that would introduce the roots, introduce aflatoxin on the roots, then how you store it. Aflatoxin is a byproduct of mold. So if you're doing your storage in a way that there's no light, there's a high humidity in your storage area, definitely the byproduct of the dead molds will be aflatoxin. I usually say, you see people doing a bulk production of these cereals and grains. They do bulk production and then you store them. In the days of our mothers, we could see them every day in the morning. They spread them out, they spread the maize and air them. But nowadays, somebody just stores, and even the storage silo is not the traditional one that will allow air to go through into the air and light to go through into the storage. Then you go and keep it in a store that is made of concrete and has no proper lighting, and you don't have time to keep on spreading your maize outside to dry, or your groundnuts outside to dry. That way, by the time you're harvesting, or by the time you're taking it to a processor, it will have grown some mold. So when it is being processed, aflatoxin levels will be very high. So storage is key. And if you're doing bulk production of grains, please have a regime that allows you to be drying them properly, and a storage that is well aerated, that will not allow moisture to seep into the grain. So it goes back to the farmer, Linda, because if the farmer doesn't have this kind of information, they'll think it's normal for me to have a lot of bags and bags of maize and nisikauche. Who will ask me? At the end of the day, I'll take it to the market and sell it. Then you find the processor suffering so much, having to deal with aflatoxin.
All right. Well, okay. And speaking of which, again, from its original form, sometimes we know that we are moving at that point of the world where, we are very creative, we discover, we try to enhance lots of stuff. So adulteration is one thing that in huge ways has been considered as one factor that, destroys or pulls down the quality of some of these foods. In this case, how do we get to balance and ensure that in as much as we proceed to take food through these processes, again, we do not lose the essential quality of it?
Yeah. Adulteration comes out of greed, and currently in the food safety standards, it's called food fraud, where someone wants to sell what they don't have. So my advice would be let processors, because adulteration happens at the processor level in most cases, or even at farm level in few cases. Let farmers have specification that is required with their product and controls. There's a standard food safety prerequisite program, the hazard analysis and critical control points. It requires any processor to have identified the risks that are there to this product and to his processes and put controls. Because without controls, you will not know who decides that you're selling unga and he brings in another thing in that unga to make it fill to a pack of 5 kg. So it's the controls that you put in place. Like I'll talk about dairy processors. Dairy processors or dairy people who are buying milk from farmers, they have a way of testing to know whether that milk is adulterated with water, if it's adulterated with fat, if it's adulterated, because they do the residue test, they also do density of the milk, they check for milk fat. So all this lies again back to a processor. A processor is able to detect if they have the control measures that are required by the hazard analysis and critical control point standard or by the other food safety standard that will enable them to prevent adulteration from taking place. However, each product which are sold, like milk that is not sold, milk that is not processed, sold by a processor, it's very difficult for you as a consumer to know what has happened to that milk. Because there's somebody will bring, if they've added water, you'll just know when you're tasting your tea. Then that is when you know. If they've added Blue Band, you'll only know when you see things floating on top of your tea. But the risk is, you don't know if they're adding water. You don't know how clean that water is. You don't know what contaminants are in that water that they introduced to your milk. So it is very risky if it's not coming from a process.
All right, what a huge topic, and we keep learning from it. In a minute or 30 seconds, what will be your parting shots in terms of, us handling food properly at this time of COVID-19 and ensuring that it is safe and of quality for consumption?
My parting shot will be health and hygiene are together. You cannot achieve health if you don't look at the basic principles of hygiene. So whatever we are doing, whether we are farming, let us follow good agricultural practices, which also talks about hygiene. Whether you are cleaning, let us follow good hygiene practices, personal hygiene, environmental hygiene, equipment hygiene, everything that you do, remember there's something you are targeting to achieve. If it is cleaning, you are targeting to remove germs. If it is cooking, you are targeting to build health. So let us work together to ensure that safety is achieved together. We have regulators, we have standards, but with these standards and without our cooperation, we will not be able to consume safe foods. Quality of food is built in that food. We will not wait for KEBS to come and test it. Let us build quality in our food by doing the right things when we are processing and producing.
All right. There you go. Thank you so much, Ms. Rosalinda Kisero, food safety consultant, industrial microbiologist. It was great having you this morning to get to learn some more. I know there's so much that we can learn about food security, and we can almost guarantee you that we'll be having more of these sessions, especially every other Monday, to take a look at how best we can handle our foods for our own good. It was great having you this morning. My name is Linda Alela. I get to see you again tomorrow, same time, same place. Thank you so much for always keeping it TV47, the home of Untold Story. That's the end of Morning Cafe. Bye-bye.